today's lecture we will do two things. Number one is we will learn about Hashing failure criteria and how it has been implemented in the software Abacus. And the second thing we want to discuss is progressive damage. Progressive damage means that all the theories of failure that we have studied will tell us about onset of damage. Now, after onset of damage, what happens? Can we say that a composite has failed if one fiber has broken or if there is a single matrix crack? The answer is no. So how do we implement those things? What is the logic behind, or how do we do progressive damage modeling? These are the two objectives of today's lecture. So first we will discuss about progressive damage. Is my screen visible?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Good. So a few weeks ago, we had discussed this GIF image. Basically, by looking at this GIF image, you can see that even if there are certain damages, my composite can still have some structural integrity. It is still not going to break into two. Now, the problem is that the theories of failure that we learned only tell us the onset of damage. They don't tell us about progressive damage. Okay. Also, additionally, there is another problem that if I have multiple layers, multiple lamina in a laminate, one lamina failing does not mean that my laminate has failed. So how do we deal with situations like this? Okay. So first of all, what we can do is we know that there are certain theories of failure. Based on theories of failure, we can have a failure loci or a failure envelope. And 1 minute. Sorry, there was a phone call. So we learned that for a certain composite, for a certain lamina, we have a theory of failure. By doing some strain transformation, we can also have failure envelopes for other laminas for some other degree. For example, if F0 0 degree and F0 90 degree, we can have different failure envelopes like this. Okay. So now let's say I have a 0 and 90 degree laminate. Okay. Then I have two failure envelopes, one for 0 degree, one for 90 degree. And if we post it in one plot, then we can divide this into four regions, 1, 2, 3, and 4. In one, which is the overlap between the two failure, if the state of strain or stress is in that region, then none of the plies will fail. In region 2, 90 degree ply does not fail, 0 degree ply fails. In 3, 0 degree does not fail, 90 fails, and in 4, all plies fail. So this region of 1, that all plies are intact, is known as your first ply failure envelope. In our previous class, we learnt about how different layers, different lamina can fail. You have failure envelopes for the lamina. By putting together different laminas, the failure theories, the failure envelopes for different lamina, putting it together, you can get the region for the first ply failure. At the borders of 1, the first ply is going to fail. Okay, clear? Any questions so far?
Sir, by looking at this, can we tell the what mode in which it'll be failing?
No, no, no. There are
No,
some theories of failure which allow you to do that, but otherwise generally not.
We can't.
A more general case could be you have certain theories of failures like this. The first shape is, let's say, for lamina 1, the second shape is for lamina 2, depending on the theory of failure that you choose. This red region that I have marked is your first ply failure envelope. And the overall is your last ply failure envelope. So the laminate strength can be defined as maximum of last ply failure and first ply failure. At that, your laminate is definitely going to fail. So at A and 1, at least one of the laminas are going to fail. At B and 2, your entire laminate is going to fail. Okay. Then we can also use concepts like factor of safety or margin of safety. Essentially, what we are doing is we are reducing the failure envelope by the same size. The shape remains the same. We are reducing the dimensions by introducing a factor of safety. Initially, it was the thin line that is there, but after factor of safety, it becomes the solid gray line. And the damage criterion is based on ultimate strength. The state of damage is not taken into account. Okay, so first ply failure is important for us because outside the first ply failure, at least one ply has failed. But failure of one ply or lamina is not failure of the laminate. Can the laminate carry on beyond the first ply failure? How can we do analysis like this? This is known as progressive damage. So for example, in this, you can see that this is all the middle and the top, the first, third and fifth layer. First, third and fifth layer are 0 degrees. Second and fourth are 90 degrees. If you see carefully, what do you see? You see lots of cracks in the 90-degree plies. The 0-degree ply is almost intact. So if I have a composite like this and I pull it in the load direction as shown, the 90-degree plies have failed, 0-degree has not failed, and in any case, the 0-degree plies would be taking more load with the load as shown. Then, how do we analyze something like this? We can easily predict when the first cracks will appear in the 90-degree. But what will happen after that crack? That is also, you can say, progressive damage. So how do we do it like this? So imagine that this is my composite, 0 at the top and bottom, 90 in the center. Simpler drawing of the picture that I just showed in the last ply. Now you apply load in the 0 in this direction, in the direction of this arrow. Now, first of all, you will see crack in the 0-degree, in the 90-degree plies. Okay, where there is crack, the stress distribution is going to be like this. Away from the crack, it is still going to take as much load as it takes, but in the crack, it is tending to 0. As you increase the load, the cracks are going to increase more and more. So instead of a straight line, the stress in the matrix point by point is going to vary like this. And as you increase the crack, these undulations will change. Now, I think it is common sense that I can tell that as the number of cracks is increasing, the average stress in the 90-degree ply is decreasing. Yes or no? This is what is going to happen. The red line, let's say, is the average. Initially, it was the solid line. One crack, it comes here. Two cracks, it comes here. Three crack, it comes even down. So the practice is that we will replace the complex stress distribution with lowered average stress. Okay, and lowered average stress in the 90-degree ply means that the stiffness in the 90-degree ply has been reduced. This is the basic philosophy while doing progressive damage, that if there is damage, the load carrying capacity decreases. Load carrying capacity decreases means that the stiffness has somehow decreased. We will decrease the stiffness of a ply which has failed or a lamina that has failed, and then rerun the classical lamination theory and iterate like that. At every load step, check for damage. If there is damage, lower the stiffness, rerun the classical lamination theory, so on and so forth. Sorry. Okay. So good. Any questions about this philosophy, this idea? So if not, this is what we are saying. Let's say initially my plies stress strain curve was like this red line. We'll only look at, let's say it is, for simplicity, we are just looking at the slope. What happens after the linear elastic point, we don't care. If it was this, the slope of this line is the initial Young's modulus. After damage, the slope changes and it becomes E by df. E is E damage ply or E by damage factor. Some factor I will reduce the stiffness. Or in other words, the stress strain curve will look like this. So I will have till the damage does not happen, the slope is E, that is the Young's modulus. After damage, the Young's modulus is decreased by a factor, damage factor, let's call it df. So the slope of this line changes. If I do it at significantly small number of steps, this curve will become smooth and will give me the stress strain curve for the lamina. Okay, is this clear? So basically we are saying that I will model a non-linear stress strain curve by saying that it is piecewise linear and my piece is sufficiently small. As soon as there is damage, the stiffness is increasing, so the slope is decreasing. The stiffness is decreasing, so the slope is also decreasing. This is how we can do progressive damage modeling in composite materials. So we had learned this CLT approach to calculating ply stress and damage. This I'm sure you understand. Now we are introducing another loop to our flowchart, that we do the failure criteria. We will have the degradation factor and then the Q matrix in the 1-2 plane will be changed for certain lamina where the damage has taken place, and then we can iterate. And we'll have this loop over and over again till we will suffer, till my composite has broken into two and does not take any load. Okay, so this is a very important concept. Any questions about this slide or this slide, please let me know.
Sir, can you explain this slide once again?
In this slide, we are saying that the slope of the stress strain curve initially at low strain, the stress strain curve slope is my Young's modulus. Okay, then we are saying that after damage, the Young's modulus is reduced by some factor. We will call it, let's say, df. Okay, where df is some number, or you can actually look at it like it is E underscore df. So the Young's modulus has been reduced due to presence of damage. This damage is happening because the average stress reduces as we have damage. As the damage increases, this red line is going to come lower and lower. So the Young's modulus actually is decreasing because the load carrying capacity is decreasing. For a certain applied strain, the average value of stress is reducing, which means that the Young's modulus is reducing due to damage. If it is undamaged, the modulus is E, which is the slope of this line. After onset of damage, maybe the stress strain curve will be like this, where the slope of this line is my modulus, which is reduced. E is greater than E df. So in theory, in practice, the implementation is like this. So initially, the Young's modulus is E, and we will keep on applying strain increments till we reach damage. After damage, the Young's modulus is calculated again, and then strain increments are added, but this time the modulus is slightly lower. So for same amount of strain increase, the increase, so for here, for small delta E, the strain increase is, the stress increases this much, but here the stress increase is lower. This is smaller than this for the same, let's say, delta strain. This is because the modulus has decreased. Modulus has decreased because for the same amount of strain, the load carrying capacity has reduced. Okay. And in this curve, I have shown only two linear curves. So I'm saying that the stress strain curve is bilinear, but there is nothing stopping me from having very small increments of delta E and recalculating the Young's modulus at every increment of strain. So if I have large number of time or strain increment, then this curve will become smooth, which basically means that I'm going to calculate. So this strain is epsilon plus epsilon zk. I will not do it like this. So nm is now actually going to be n plus delta n. Every iterations, I am going to only increase delta n and m plus delta m. So we will run this entire curve for some value of n, check for failure criteria, update the stiffness based on what damage has taken place. And in the next time increment, now my load is n plus delta n, m plus delta m. And then again do the failure criteria, again calculate the stiffness. And this loop will keep on going till I reach the m that I wanted to reach. Or if my loss of stiffness is sufficiently high to say that my laminate has failed. Few things to keep in mind is that Q matrix is monotonously decreasing. As damage happens, Q matrix, the different terms will decrease. It cannot go high once it has decreased. So this will be monotonously decreasing, and this way we will be able to get the entire nonlinear curve for my laminate. Okay, is this clear?
Sir?
Yes.
So could you please go to the previous slide?
Which one?
Yes, sir. So in this, the second curve, shouldn't it be changing? I mean, with every point, because we don't
Yes,
know the damage.
It should change at every point or every delta at every delta strain increment. Every time there is a strain increment, the value of EDF might decrease a little bit. This is only a simple illustration of the idea. In reality,
Okay, sir.
every time delta E changes, the curve, the slope will change slightly, may change.
And sir, how do we quantify this DF damage factor? Because we don't know how much damage has been already been.
That we will discuss in the coming slides. Na?
Okay, sir.
Okay. And even though I am showing this idea in the context of classical lamination theory, this idea of degradation factor will work for all type of composite materials. Okay. So what are the degradation schemes? There are some simple degradation schemes which says that you can use the same degradation scheme for all the plies. All plies happen at once. I mean, it doesn't matter if my ply A has failed or ply B has failed or ply C has failed. I will put some degradation factor for all Qij. Other than Q11, we'll think that Q11 is constant, but apply this to all the plies all at once. So if A has failed, but A, B, C, everybody's stiffness drops. This is one very simple way of doing it. The second is apply to only the plies that have failed. Plies that fail have Qij is equal to 0. I mean, let's say I have plies which have 0, 90, 45, etc., and 90 degree has failed. So in 90 degree, I will just say Qij is 0. And then recalculate the ABD matrix, do everything. And keep on calculating the R factor every time. If R factor of the entire laminate becomes less than 1, then it has failed. Both of these are very simple schemes, because the first scheme says that if it doesn't matter which ply fails, all the plies have loss of stiffness, which is not true. The second theory says that if a ply fails, Qij is binary. Either the Qij is some constant that you have calculated for virgin material. As soon as it fails, let us replace Qij by 0. The second one is a slight improvement over the first one, but still it is not ideal. So we often use what are known as intelligent or progressive damage. So you have different degradation factors for different Qij terms, which will be based on the failure mode. So if I have fiber failure, I will only reduce Q11. If I have matrix failure, I will reduce Q22 and Q12, and so on and so forth. And you have different degradation factors. If fiber fails, it goes from 0 to 1. Q11 goes from 0 to 1. But if matrix fails, maybe the Q22 will go from Q22 to 0.99 Q22. So this will gradually increase. So this intelligent progressive is usually what is implemented and what we usually use in real life. Okay, but this is only possible if you are able to distinguish between the failure modes. If you use a phenomenological method, then you will not be able to use this intelligent progressive damage modeling. Okay, is this clear? If it is clear, then we can go and look at Hashin failure criteria and discuss how exactly the idea that we have discussed today will be implemented in the context of that failure criteria. Can I go to that topic, or you have any questions on this? If not, let us look at Hashin failure criteria. So before that, let us, is my Abacus screen visible?
Yes.
sir.
Yes, sir.
Sir.
Okay. So if you go to materials and if you go for damage of fiber reinforced, it says Hashin damage. Can you see Hashin damage?
Sir, there is a lag. Yes, sir.
Now
Now
you
we
can
can.
Yes, sir.
Okay, Hashin damage. So if I click on Hashin damage, then it looks like this. There are 6 entries that it is asking: longitudinal tensile, longitudinal compressive, transverse tensile, transverse compressive, longitudinal shear, transverse shear. Is this visible now?
Yes, sir.
Yes.
So it wants these 6 strengths: longitudinal tensile, longitudinal compressive, transverse tensile, transverse compressive, transverse shear, longitudinal shear. And if, can you see the sub options at the right hand side?
Yes, sir. Yes.
If you click on this, there will be 2 options below that. One says damage evolution, the other says damage stabilization. Okay. So if you click on damage evolution, so damage evolution is basically progressive damage that we have just discussed. Okay. So if I click on this damage evolution, then after some time you should see a sub option editor. Is that visible?
Yes, sir.
A second window has opened. Now you see 4 quantities here: longitudinal tensile fracture energy, longitudinal compressive fracture energy, transverse tensile fracture energy, and transverse compressive fracture energy. So you have to put 6 strengths and these 4 fracture energy terms to be able to model progressive damage in FE software. Okay. If I say okay, now there is another. If I click on sub options, there is another possible. There is another damage evolution below that is. Yes or no? Sub options, I have clicked, I am seeing damage evolution, damage stabilization. Can you see this or not yet?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
If I click on damage stabilization, it will ask for viscosity coefficients. These are numerical values. This is something that is very hard to get experimentally. So we will put some small value, do some hit and trial. But the other 10 constants that I have described is something that we can derive from experiments, and we should be careful while inputting. So it's clear now what 10 constants we are looking at. We are looking at, so is my PPT visible?
Yes.
Yes, sir.
So we are looking at 6 strengths: longitudinal tensile, longitudinal compressive, transverse tensile, transverse compressive, longitudinal shear, transverse shear, and the 4 fracture energies: tensile fracture, compressive fracture, transverse tensile fracture, transverse compressive fracture. The top 6 at the top are for damage initiation. The bottom 4 in red are for damage evolution. Let's try to understand what is happening. So Hashin failure criteria distinguishes between fiber and interfiber and tension and compression. This is something that we have discussed. For example, matrix failure mode, this formula is there, and matrix compressive failure, this formula is there, which we have already discussed last week, and we also solved a numerical. Similarly, tensile failure and compressive failure. Okay. These are the 2 papers, 1980, 1973, rather old papers, but they were the first ones who made this failure criteria. Now, post damage, what happens? Inside the software Abacus, prior to damage initiation, the material is linearly elastic and the stiffness is from the plane stress orthotropic material. At the onset of damage, elasticity matrix will be altered as follows. The elasticity matrix or the Q matrix, instead of no, sorry, elasticity matrix. Instead of E1, I will now write 1 minus df into E1 divided by d. Instead of E12, it becomes 1 minus df into 1 minus dm into nu21 E1, and so on and so forth. Okay. So these are the damage parameters, and this is how it is defined. df is due to fiber failure, dm is due to matrix failure, ds is due to shear, and capital D is 1 minus df into 1 minus dm into nu12 into nu21. Okay. So basically what Abaqus is going to do is, for a certain state of stress, it is going to check that has it failed, or if it has failed due to which mode: matrix tensile, matrix compressive, or fiber compressive or tensile, and depending on that alter the constant E1, E2, or the different terms that are there. Okay, this is, I think, the inverse of the Q matrix that we are looking at. Now the question comes, how is the value of df calculated? How is the value of dm calculated? That is coming from the fracture energy that has been requested. So fracture energy is nothing but the area under the stress strain curve after the onset of first damage. So if this is my stress strain curve, and let's say the first damage happened here, then this area is the fracture energy input. This we have to derive experimentally, input into Abaqus. Abaqus is going to model it like this. It says that the response of the material is bilinear. It increases, and then the equivalent stress and displacement, if I plot it, it will decrease. This is region 1 is linear elastic, and after damage decreases, the stiffness starts reducing. And based on the slope of this line, you can calculate the value of initial Young's modulus and the Young's modulus after that, and based on this you can calculate the different damage parameters that are here depending on which damage has taken place, and by looking at this curve for the fracture energy. So it has asked for 4 fracture energies. It is going to imagine 4 curves like this depending on the type of loading and depending on which damage has happened. Accordingly, it is going to update the stiffness assuming this bilinear behavior. Okay, so constitutive law is expressed as a linear stress displacement relation. This is the constitutive law inside the software. Element is deleted if any value of B becomes 1.0. You could make it lower also. Okay, and element is replaced once damage variable for all failure modes has been done, and current software only include planar elements. So you can only do 2D analysis, but this is how it is implemented both in the software ANSYS and Abaqus. Any questions on this implementation? Important concepts are, do you understand how this df has been calculated? Was I clear enough or not? df, dm. So df is going to happen if it is fiber failure. Remember that there are, so if either of these two conditions are satisfied, then we have to look at upgrading dm. If these two are done, then I have to think about df. Okay, and df evolution is through 0.7 and 8, dm evolution is through input 9 and 10. dm evolution accounts for sigma 2 as well as sigma 4, 5 and 6. So this is shear and transverse. This is matrix tensile. The input that you are going to put, transverse strength and the in-plane shear strength, that are coming in these equations. If it is tensile compressive, the rules are slightly different, but they appear. Similarly, the input of strength in tension and compression in the axial direction will come in x and x prime. Okay, and nowadays in the latest version of Abacus, another new improvement has come where they say that it is x1 this term plus alpha into this. Alpha is the shear contribution coefficient. Okay, alpha can vary from, this is only in software Abacus, 0 to 1, meaning that if you are loading in the tensile direction, how important is the shear, that is user defined. If you put alpha is equal to 1, then it becomes Hushin failure criteria. But if you put alpha is equal to 0, then it becomes the Rotem failure criteria. You can do both in the software Abacus. If you go back to our software, you see here, can you see my software Abacus?
Yes,
Yes.
sir.
This alpha value is this alpha that I am doing. So it is sigma 1 x square plus alpha into this term. Alpha is the shear contribution coefficient. According to Hushin failure criteria, alpha is 1. According to Rotem failure criteria, alpha is 0. Abacus allows you a limit. You can put the value of alpha from 0 to 1, whatever value that you like. So once you have the onset of damage, you also have the fracture energy. That is the damage, the area under the stress strain curve from first failure to ultimate damage. And for the same area, Abacus will draw a bilinear stress displacement curve as shown. And depending on where you are at the curve, you can the Young's modulus is recalculated. Based on the modulus calculation, you can update the value of df and dm, and accordingly change the different elasticity matrix. And this is done at every time increment. And then finally, you will get the nice nonlinear stress strain curve for composite materials as you would expect. Any questions? This has been implemented both in ANSYS and Abacus. The same implementation, everything is exactly the same. Other than alpha, I think the shear stress contribution coefficient, I think Abacus allows, ANSYS does not allow, to the best of my knowledge. Okay, any questions? Now, a question that should come to your mind is, if a stress strain curve is given, how can we identify when the first damage has happened? It is not easy, correct? Yes or no? If I give you a stress strain curve, just by looking at that, it's practically impossible to identify the first damage. So what we will typically do is, we will calculate the area below the stress strain curve, take 90 or 95% of that value. That is going to be your fracture energy to be input into the software. Okay, good. Any questions? No? If not, then I think these are the two topics I wanted to discuss. Then maybe we can close this lecture. I had made videos on the two topics that we had discussed. You will have the recording as well as the two videos to look at with the description of the same thing. If you have any doubt, then you can come back to me. Tomorrow we will have our second exam. Okay? And 14 of you will have Viva. I will send you the list in the afternoon today. Okay, any questions, or we can wind up this lecture? Yes?
Sir, we have syllabus only up to testing of composites. Right?
Testing of composites and classical lamination theory, these two topics.
Okay, sir. Okay.
Damage is not there. Damage is post classical lamination theory. Okay, progressive damage we are learning, but you don't need to implement it in your term project.
Okay, sir.
Okay, good. Then please look at the videos. I think this is, I am surprised that you don't have any questions on this topic. Maybe it is due to the online mode, it is hard to quickly understand or not understand, or to know what you have not understood. So watch the videos that I will share, watch the recording of this, and Thursday we will discuss this again. Okay?
Yes, sir.
Okay, sir.
Okay, then I will stop recording.